All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Now, if you had told any fan of the Denver Broncos that watched their team win Super Bowl 50 that this would be their last moment in the sun, they would have looked at you like you were nuts. But 7 years later, here we are. Since winning it all in 2015, the Broncos have only posted one winning season, while they've lost 10 or more games in five of their last six seasons, including this year. Four different head coaches since winning Super Bowl 50, 11 different starting quarterbacks since Peyton Manning retired following Denver's Super Bowl win. And right now, this Broncos team is up a creek. The Broncos, hands down, have been the most disappointing NFL team this season, as this was a team that was supposed to contend for the Super Bowl, but instead they've opted to be a part of the toilet bowl. The Broncos are 4-11 this season, and they are on a fast track to nowhere. Acquiring quarterback Russell Wilson might be one of the worst sports trades in history, as Denver has one of the worst offenses in the NFL this season. Wilson was supposed to be the guy to elevate this team, but instead, 12 touchdowns and nine interceptions this season with a completion percentage of 60. You look at the game yesterday, and the Broncos just got embarrassed by the Los Angeles Rams 51-14. And in that contest, if you want to call it one, Russ looked like some hot garbage as he was 15 to 27 passing for 214, one touchdown, three interceptions, and six sacks. And eventually he did get benched, but he should have been benched, honestly, from the word go. Russ in that game got outplayed by Baker Mayfield, a quarterback who was on his third different team in less than a calendar year. And Mayfield was the guy who looked like the perennial Pro Bowler yesterday as he was calm, cool, and collected. And let's not forget, Mayfield only joined the Rams a couple of weeks ago, and he's still catching up to speed. And he was the guy who was the efficient quarterback and the leader, if you will, in helping his team go out there and win yesterday. And the result of the Denver Broncos beatdown yesterday marked the end of the Nathaniel Hackett era as the Broncos head coach, as he was fired after just 15 games into his tenure. I'm not the only one who's going to say this, what I'm about to say. I'm sure there's going to be people out here that agree with me. This right here is on Russell Wilson. And the thing is, nobody else is going to come close to taking the blame for this debacle that the Denver Broncos are currently having than Russell Wilson. And it's warranted because you think about it, for several years in Seattle when he was with the Seahawks, the narrative was that he needed help. Well, the Broncos gave Wilson all the help that a quarterback could need this season. They gave him quality wide receivers, a solid offensive line, and one of the top defenses in the NFL. What's going on, Waste of Space? He's saying, is Wilson weird or is he just eccentric? He doesn't seem to take losing personal. Mayfield making Rule look even worse than he already was, by the way. I didn't know Hackett was fired. GM Peyton next. I'll tell you like this, and you beat me to it, and I appreciate that. Great minds just think alike on it. But the thing with Russ, I get the feeling like Russ isn't one of the guys. And for me, you go back to that Seattle team, great team that won in 2013, and I've said it before, and I'm going to say it again right now. The Seahawks won that Super Bowl with Russell Wilson at quarterback. The Seahawks did not win that Super Bowl because Russell Wilson was a quarterback. There was a big difference. You look at that defense that year in 2013 when the Seahawks annihilated the Broncos. They had talent at each level. You had the likes of Chris Clemens on that defensive line. You had Bobby Wagner and company at linebacker, and then of course the Legion of Boom secondary. You had a solid offensive line. You had Marshawn Lynch in his prime. You think about the receivers they had. Also, one of the better kick returners for a couple of years in the NFL was Percy Harvin, and of course he showed that in the Super Bowl by returning a kickoff for a touchdown. The Seahawks only needed a quarterback to not go out there and lose the game and be efficient. That's what Russ was. They got away from that in Super Bowl number 49 against New England. They got cute, should have given the ball to Marshawn Lynch. Everybody knows that. And of course, they paid for it. And after that moment, that Seattle team was never the same. Now, let's fast forward here to through 2022. You've seen defensive players get up in the face for Russell Wilson due to his poor play. We've seen receivers show frustration on the field because of Russell Wilson's poor play. And at the end of the day, Russell Wilson was supposed to elevate this team. You don't make a trade like the Denver Broncos did, where you give up multiple first round picks, multiple players, and then give a guy a 5-year extension for close to $250 million, and he performs the way that he has been performing. It just don't work. And I'll tell you like this: when you see those other guys in that locker room, they're seeing the press conferences, they're seeing the amount of money that Russ is getting. And the bottom line is they're looking at him and they're like, this is what the Broncos paid all of this money for. I don't think so. So at the end of the day, Russell Wilson, I mean, to your point, he doesn't seem to take losing personal. I mean, if I was married to Sierra and I'm getting, close to $50 million a year, I'd be okay too. And, to your point about Mayfield, making Rule look even worse than he already is, by the way, I've said it before and I'll say it again about Matt Rule. Matt Rule to me was never an NFL head coach. And I think we saw that during his tenure with the Carolina Panthers. Now, Sean McVay is a quarterback guru, and this is why it's so important to put all of the pieces around the quarterback to help him develop. Now, to Baker Mayfield's point, he did have people around him from a player standpoint in Cleveland with the Browns to help him elevate his game. I'm not sure about the coaching staff, but definitely the players around him. And maybe, just maybe, he might have found a home here with the Rams. We have to see. Hackett did get fired today, 51-14 on Christmas Day on national TV is hard to get away from. Then, of course, when Hackett comes out and says, we really weren't prepared. That's not a good look. So, we saw the frustration boil over with this defense, especially with Randy Gregory, a guy who has had issues in the past with the Dallas Cowboys. And of course, when things are going bad, all of the negative things that you do come to the surface. And we saw that again last night for the Denver Broncos. I don't think general manager George Payton is next. I think he gets a reprieve. But the bottom line is they got to go out there and find themselves a head coach. And they have to find a head coach who is going to be able to bring this thing together. Because, I mean, the thing, again, Denver gave Russell Wilson everything. And what do they have to show for it? 4 wins, a disgruntled fan base, a divided locker room, and a huge cap hit for a quarterback that looks like he is indeed a shell of himself. The Broncos have one of the top defenses in the NFL, one of the top scoring defenses in the NFL this season, and it's been wasted. I mean, you look at the way that Denver has played defensively, and instead of 4-11, this team should be 11-4, if not 12-3, contending right there with the Kansas City Chiefs for the top spot in the AFC West and potentially home field advantage throughout the AFC playoffs. But that has not been the case. And then, of course, Denver doesn't even have a first round pick to show for it for next spring in the NFL draft, as that is now property of the Seattle Seahawks, courtesy of the Russell Wilson trade. So for George Payton, it's going to be interesting to see how he and the rest of his Broncos front office rebound from this disaster. And of course, the question is going to be, what can the Broncos do for next season? The first thing that they have to do is get themselves a head coach, somebody who is going to solidify this team. The most uh not the most, but the biggest name that makes the biggest sense, or the most sense rather, is going to be former New Orleans Saints head coach Sean Payton. It's going to be a scenario. He's going to be a very hot commodity this off season. And if you're the new Broncos ownership, which includes the heir to Walmart, are you going to be willing to pony up the bread to bring in a Sean Payton? You just paid Russell Wilson all of this money. So it shouldn't be a problem for you to go out there and pay a guy like Sean Payton $10 million or more to be your head coach next season. And it's going to be important for Sean Payton or whoever comes in there. They have to unify this team because this is a team that is divided next season. And again, whoever is the next head coach of the Broncos has to find a way to get the most out of Russell Wilson because you can't trade him. You're stuck with him. So at the end of the day, you have to find a way to make it work. Nathaniel Hackett really never should have been the head coach of this team. And I think the Broncos showed that today by firing him. Russell Wilson has been a shell of himself all season long. You go back to the season opener when the Broncos lost on the road to the Seattle Seahawks. That was Russell Wilson's best game. He was 29 or 42 for 340, completed nearly 70% of his passes with one TD. Since then, he has been terrible. I mean, there's no other way to slice it. And very rarely can you just put the struggles of a team on one singular player in the NFL. But the Broncos' disappointing campaign comes down to the disappointment that they have received and seen on a weekly basis from Russell Wilson. So it's going to be a very interesting offseason for the Denver Broncos. And you think about it, this team is beloved. The Broncos have one of the better fan bases and a loyal fan base in regards to NFL franchises. They put their quarterbacks on pedestals, and Russell Wilson came into Denver with a bag full of past accolades, but right now it simply don't amount to a hill of beans. So this is going to be one of the most important off seasons for the Denver Broncos franchise. And the next hire as their head coach is going to be one of the most important in franchise history. Russell Wilson came in and said, "Bronco fans, let's ride." Nobody's riding with him right now as he's on this bus all alone. So let's see what the Denver Broncos can do to fix things heading into 2023. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take the time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you have not already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it'll be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. Now, you can check it out. Drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin and I'm signing off. And just before I do sign off, I want to thanks again to my partner with the tag Ways to Space. He's saying great job, solid takes, and keep up the good work. I definitely appreciate the support. And once again, this is William Martin signing off, saying take care. And thanks again for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube.